All right, guys. Welcome to chapter 3. I refer to most chapters as units, so I'm calling it Unit 3 going forward. We're going to talk about data acquisition. Acquisition. In other words, how do you get data up? Give me 1 second. Let me pause this because I have a phone call. I'll be right with you guys. All right, guys. Sorry about that. Just people calling me, let me know where they are. Guess I am popular. So I'm give me controls back here for this. All right. So what are the objectives of this chapter or unit? We're going to list digital evidence storage formats. So that's going to be explored. Explain ways to determine the best acquisition method. So we're going to go over which acquisition methods work the best. Describe contingency plan for data acquisition tools. So in case some tools fail or don't work, you're going to have a backup for them. And in this chapter, we're going to explain how to use those tools. We're also going to explain how to validate data acquisition. Sorry, I have H today. Yes, I'm wearing Mandalorian shirt. I just thought I'd throw that in there. Describe RAID acquisition methods. This is something I mentioned in the previous chapter about RAID. If you're not familiar with it, let me know. I can give you some reading material on it. It's not too heavy. The stuff I have explains RAID pages simply. It makes it easy to learn. Explain how to use remote network acquisition tools. That one's a fun one. I might have you guys do something like that, but it's going to be kind of hard because you need to target a machine, and I don't want you guys to target something in your network that you can damage or break it. I don't want to go that route. List other project tools available for data acquisition. So it's not a lot to cover. It's about 60 slides. I will do my best to make this into 2 parts. So using understanding storage formats for digital evidence. Data and forensics acquisition tools is stored as an image file. So yeah, you're essentially everything that you copy from a drive will be a whole drive, right? And it's stored as an image. There's 3 kinds of formats. There's raw format, proprietary formats. Those are more associated with manufacturers like Mac, for example. I know Sony's, if you're running them, these are really weird formats sometimes. Advanced forensic format, that's something that's more standard that you see in the industry when you work it. Personally, I haven't ran into it too much because I don't do forensics that often. It's rare. The only forensic I have personally ever done has been on cell phones back about 10 years ago when I would just draw or extract, text messages. You just kind of knew where to look and you copy them out. It wasn't with any software. It was very manual process. Sorry. Plus, it didn't want to invade someone's privacy. It's more of a request from counselors and dealing with students. If you're curious about it, inbox me. I can tell you all about it, but I'm not going to get too into detail in this lecture about it. So, why do we use those 3 formats? It makes it possible to write bitstream data to files. What does that mean? Advantages: faster data transfers. Ignores minor data read errors on source drives. Most computer forensics tools can read raw format. Yeah, most of the tools you can use do read the raw format. Disadvantages: requires as much storage space as original disk or data. So that's not really a disadvantage because when you make an image, you're cloning the drive. If it's a terabyte, you're cloning the whole terabyte, right? And it's going to go on a terabyte or even 2 terabytes if you want to be nice to give it room, I guess, to breathe. But like, how could that be a disadvantage? If you're copying the same thing onto technically the same thing for you to extract or do a travel with it. Anyways, tools might not collect marginal bad sectors. Yeah, that's true. That's probably the true disadvantage here, I would argue. So, where are we? Most forensic tools have their own format. Yeah, a lot of different companies use their own formats when it comes to this kind of stuff. That's true. Features offered, options to compare or compress or not compress image files. Normally, you don't really compress image files though, because that can kind of skew data, make it be weird, and it's more common to leave it just not compressed. So it's the whole size. You don't worry about it. Compressing image into smaller segmented files, that's risky too. I don't recommend doing that. Can integrate metadata into the image file. Yeah. So what that means is when you capture the drive, you capture what was most recently searched, and it's located on that image file that you create. That's true. Disadvantages: inability to share an image between different tools. Yeah, since most tools use different imaging, unless it's raw, for example, raw format, then yeah, they won't be able to read them to all different formats. Files a limitation for each segmented volume. Yeah, that's true. There is a limitation depending on the volume that's segmented and size. The expert witness compression format is unofficial standard. You do run into that one more often than raw. It's more of just the common one that's used that I've seen here and there. So let's get into a little bit more. So advanced forensic formats, it was developed by Dr. Simpson L. Garfinkel. I hopefully did not butcher that, as an open source acquisition format. The goals were to provide compressed or uncompressed image files, no size restriction for disk to image files, provide space in the image file or segmented files for metadata, which is the data that's most recent and relevant and copied and all that jazz. Simple design with extensibility. So it means it can be expanded. Open source for multiple platforms and OSS. Internal consistency checks for self-authentication. File extensions include ADF for segmented image files and AFM for AFF metadata. AFF is open source. So determining the best acquisition methods, types of acquisition methods. This is going to be kind of pretty important. There's static acquisition and live acquisitions. 4 methods of data collection: creating a disk to image file, creating a disk to disk. So a disk, copy one disk to another disk, creating a logical disk to a disk or disk to data file. That's essentially the same as imaging technically. Creating a sparse data copy of a file or folder. That's just your cherry picking. Determining the best method depends on circumstances of the investigation. Yeah, so if you're asked to review like accounting files and they only stored it in one folder, that's where you would use a sparse one. So it just depends on the situation, really. If I wanted to apply this to when I did it with phones, I mentioned earlier, this was more related to just grabbing text messages and just, here you go, you don't have the council read them because they don't want to do something dumb or hurt themselves and yada, yada, yada. That's about as far as I'm going to go with that. So in that case, it would be a sparse data copy because I'm only picking, a few things, not the entire phone. So continuing on, creating a disk to image file, most common method and often most flexible. Yeah, you see this a lot more often. Can make more than one copy. Yeah, so you have an image file, you store it on a hard drive, right? If it's terabyte, it's terabyte of an image. You have 2 terabytes, you have 2 image copies, more space, doesn't matter. You can just play with it. If that doesn't work, delete one image, use the other one, or modify it to a point where it breaks. That's the one other one has a backup technically. Copies are bit for bit replication of the original drive. Compatible with many commercial forensic tools. Yeah, images are read by almost all the tools. Honestly, they all have that built-in function, so it's not something you really will not see, if that makes sense. It's something you will see that's pretty common. Creating a disk to disk. When disk to image copy is not possible, tools can adjust disk geometry configuration in case, and X-ways are examples of those tools. So what that means, if you can't make an image, you literally clone the disk onto another disk without making an image of it in between or just having the image stored on there. You're not using the hard drive as storage in that sense, you're using it as a live drive. That's what that essentially means. And those 2 tools are the ways to do it. I might make you guys do something with that if you have a spare hard drive, but I want you guys to spend money. So going on. Logical or sparse acquisition. These are kind of melded together. Can take several hours. Use when your time is limited. That makes sense. Logical acquisition captures only specific files of interest to the case. Again, if you're dealing with like accounting fraud, you would look for only like, accounting documents, QuickBook documents, some PDFs, specific titles. Spark acquisition collects fragments of unallocated deleted data. So if they deleted like ledgers, for example, and you knew what some of the keywords were, you can search for that. For large disks, PST or OSTML files. So what those are, the PST and OSTML, if you guys use Outlook, that's what that's related to. PST is the old form, the new format. OST is the older format now. It's kind of flipped. Why? I have no idea. And RAID servers, that's where hard drives are in synchronization. They can run in RAID 1, where it's 1 drive to 1 drive, 3, where it's up to 5 drives, 5 can do multiple drives for backing up incremental. Then there's 10, then RAID 10 plus 1. It's all there. Don't worry. Again, I can go over RAID if you guys want to know. It's just off the top of my head, that's what RAID's for. RAID's for just backing up different kinds of data at different kinds of steps and different increments and all that kind of jazz. So it's used mostly, that's where that's used because the files are so big, depending what, like if you're, for example, Boeing, let's say they had an incident, but they got broken into and all that, and they had RAID servers they got to sift through, they will use logical or sparse, depending on what they want to do. Recover blueprints, excuse me. Like a next generation fighter or something that's critical. That's just the way you kind of think about it. And I do mention defense contractors a lot because they're pretty good examples of things they go through. More than like financial sector, yeah, but it's really not heard of that much in the sense that they don't let it leak out. You know what I mean? So moving on. So we're going to talk about when you make copies, this is what you consider. Size of the source disk, like I said, if it's a terabyte, you're copying a terabyte. Lossless comparison might be useful. Use digital signatures verification. That's built into the tools. You don't really worry about that. It checks after it's done to make sure it's copied 1 for 1. When working with large drives, an alternative is using lossless compression. Yeah, but we don't tend to compress things. I just don't, because I get what they're saying in this book in terms of compression, but when compressing data, it behaves really weird. Try it next time on like a zip and use it after about 10 times and see what it does after that, or a WinRAR file, whatever. whenever you can retain the disk, whether you can retain the disk, you normally have the disk no matter what as a backup. You just have it sitting in a locker. So time to perform the acquisition, wherever the evidence is located. Yeah, that's part of determining when you bag it, right? So contingency planning for image acquisitions. So what's your backup plan? Create a duplicate copy of your evidence image file. You know, make at least 2 images of digital device. Make at least 2 images of digital evidence. Use different tools or techniques. I will probably have you do that as a lab. Copy host protected area with disk drive as well. Consider using a hardware acquisition tool that can access the drive at the BIOS level. So what that means is you intercept the drive before it loads Windows or whatever OS, and you copy it with commands in the sense of using a tool that lets you copy it literally, all of it. It does not let you stop in the sense of host protected is what kind of it's not your boot manager, but it's what manages the boot manager. If that makes some sense for Windows. So it's usually guarded by the drive, but you can intercept it before it even launches, if that makes sense. The BIOS screen right before it kicks into Windows. That's what the tool would do. You would clone all of it literally. Anyways, be prepared to deal with encrypted drives. Whole disk encryption featured in Windows called BitLocker means static acquisitions are more difficult. May require a user to provide a decryption key. That's kind of, yeah, that's true because, sorry, the sun's behind me. Actually, there's a glare right here by my eye. If you don't have that key, you're really out of luck, and it gets really tough. At that point, you would be trying to break a key, and go circumvent it. There's are ways around it. I'll think about it. Make a lab out of it. It's not too hard, but I gotta play with it first. You guys play with it, so we'll get there when we get there. Don't worry, guys. So acquisition tools for Windows, there's a bunch of them. Advantages makes acquiring evidence from a specific drive more convenient, especially when used with hot swappable drives. That's where SCSI would come into play, but now most of the days it's M.2s, SATAs are still going to be around. Disadvantages must protect acquired data with a well-tested written block hardware device. Yeah, you'll have one in the lab, so don't worry about it. Tools can't acquire data from a disk host protected area. Yeah, because Windows is loaded, it's protected around it. Some countries have accepted the use of write blocking devices for data acquisition. That's kind of true. I can't think of any countries off the top of my head, but it's more that comes out to money, if that makes sense. So some countries have pretty decent GDP, they'll have stuff like that. So, I guarantee you Korea has it, Japan has it, China has it, Russia probably might have it. We have it, obviously. Mexico might have it, Brazil will have it. Panama, I don't know, it's a maybe. So I'm thinking off the top of my head. Canada will have it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, mini Wi-Fi boot CDs and USB drives. This is you creating a boot device essentially from a CD or DVD or USB. CD and DVDs aren't really used, but you can if they have a drive for those. The reason being, excuse me, because if you use a USB and let's say they had a virus on that machine, you didn't know about it, you can infect your drive. So that's kind of where you would use that. So you got to just think about it. So that connected drives are mounted as read-only. Before booting a system's computer, connect your target device, such as USB device. Then after when FE is booted, you can list all connected drives and alter your target USB device to read mode only, so you can run an acquisition program. Yeah, so essentially you're just playing middleman with it. We might do something with it. I'll think about it. I'll make you guys use a high-res or something. And we'll go from there. Just FYI, high-res boot CD is very powerful, but we might make a virtual machine. I'm still on the fence about what you guys are going to do for labs. I'll figure it out probably by Friday, and then I'll create the labs, and we'll go from there. You will have to make a Linux virtual machine. I'll tell you that right now. So don't get discouraged. I'll walk you through it. So acquiring data with a Linux boot CD is a little different. Linux accesses a drive that isn't mounted. Windows OS is a newer Linux automatically mount and access a drive. Yeah, that's true. Forensic Linux live CDs do not access media automatically, which eliminates the need for a write blocker. Now they're mostly USBs. They're customized and given to you. Using Linux live CD distributions, forensic Linux live CDs, the additional utilities. There's a bunch of different utilities built in that we're going to talk about in the next slide for Linux. So using Linux live CD distributions continued, forensic Linux live CDs continued configured not to mount or to mount as read only. They're usually configured to mount as read only though. Any connected storage media, well-designed Linux live CDs for computer forensics, and this is everything that comes with those kits that's extra. I was talking about their software. Penguin Solve kit, Kane, Deft, Kali Linux, that's the most popular one on the planet. I'm not trying to roll my eyes at you, but if people think you're a hacker when you have terminal open, it's probably because you're using Kali Linux. Knoppix has been around for some time. Optics is a little more bare bones, if that makes sense. I don't remember if it has a graphic user interface or not. That's the menus you click on, like Windows. I know Kali Linux does, but that's really more specialized. Sans SIFT is investigative forensic toolkit. That is a very really customized version of Linux that even I can't get my hands on. They guard that thing like it's in Fort Knox. So when you want to acquire Linux, you got to prepare the target drive for acquisition of Linux. Currently, Linux distributions can create Microsoft FAT and NTFS partition tables. fdisk command list creates, deletes, and verifies portions in Linux. mkf.ms-dos command, that's a big mouthful, formats a FAT file system for Linux. If you have a functioning Linux computer, follow steps starting on page 105 to learn how to prepare a target drive for acquisition. I'll make the lab, guys. Don't worry, that'll be a simple lab. It's not that hard. But you have to learn how to add a hard drive to your virtual machine. Which we'll do soon this week, and we'll follow Linux later. Don't worry, I'm not gonna just throw everything at you. Yes, I know it's a lot of slides, and it's just a lot of ground to cover, but we will cover things in labs that they'll be hands-on. Don't worry. Use commands. Acquiring data with DD and Linux. DD data dump command create, write, read, and write from media devices and data files. Creates raw format files, and most forensic computer sounds can read. Shortcuts DD command. The drawbacks. Requires more advanced skill than average user. Does not compress data. DD command combined with split command segment output into separate volumes. So essentially, with Linux, you can do this already, but it's more of a. It's very. I guess manual would be the word I'm looking for. Well, it's mostly automated with software for Windows, and it lets you pick and choose menus and everything, and it does it for you, so you don't really have the chance of breaking something. With Linux, it's like, okay, we're doing it, we did it. Oh no, we broke something. That's kind of like it's very raw and to the point. So continued with DD, we're talking about following the steps starting on page 12. Don't worry, this will be a lot. Acquiring data with DCFLD. God, that is a mouthful. The DD command is inherited as a data management tool, not designed for forensic acquisition. Oh, that's interesting. Hiring it with here, additional functions with DCFLDD. Don't worry, I'm just skimming it because it's something you'll see, but it's not something we might use. Specific text parent or text for clearing disk space. Log errors to an output file for analysis and review. Yeah, that's more helpful than regular old DD, believe it or not. Use several hashing options. That's for encryption. So the latest encryption hash I think is MD250 MDF 256 or 512. I don't remember which one. It's one of the two. That hasn't been broken yet. MDF5 was the most popular a couple of years ago, but that got hacked like mid to early 2000s, so it's not used. We might play with it. We might do something with hashing. Don't worry. Again, I won't make this too hard. If you have had me before class, you will be fine. You know what you're getting into. If you have had class with Dr. Selly, I work similarly to Dr. Selly, so we will be okay. Don't freak out, guys. Again, inbox me, join the Discord. It's in the syllabus if you want. Email me. I'm always available. It's on my phone. Not that hard to get a hold of. Okay, back to this. I know I'm segueing out and just trying to calm your nerves. And no, I am not nervous. Refer to a status display indicating the progress of acquisition in bytes. It just shows you characters. Look, this is this far, this far. Split data acquisitions and segmented volumes with numeric extensions. Yeah, it catalogs it technically. Verify acquired data with originals. Yeah, it does that for you. So it's a little less more straightforward and hands-on than like, oh god, what we're gonna do with like, hey, here's some extra bells and whistles that kind of cover some of your bases, so it's not so raw and rudimentary. Raw in the sense of like, oh, what did I just do? Did I break it? Or it's a little more organized. And that's what I mean in that sense. So capturing image with access data, FTK image or light, geez, that is also a mouthful. Include with access data forensic toolkit. I might be able to get that. Let's see. Designed for viewing evidence disk and disk to image files. Makes disk to image copies of evidence drives. Pretty straight, right? A logical partition and physical drive level. So logical partition, that's the drive itself. Physical drive level is physical drive. It's literally that. If you don't know what drive logic is, partition logic is, you're curious, that's what you mean, get into it. Can segment the image file, so it can split the image file up. That's cool. Evidence drive must have a hardware written blocking device. Right, blocking device, sorry. Or run from a live CD, such as mini WinFP. Yeah, you can just run it as your in between with those two. You can run it on Linux Live or mini WinFP. Here's what it looks like. I think I had you guys install this. Now I think about it. I'm sure we have it somewhere. FTK imager can't acquire drives hosted protected area. That's the downside because it's loaded within Windows. It can't access that. Using a right block device and following these steps, boot to Windows, connect device, yada, 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 start to go again. This right here, I guarantee you will be a lab this week. And I'll make a note of it. I have paper and pen right now. So let me see, slide 23. That's a paintbrush. Don't worry, guys. I'm not going to talk about painting. Not going to work. Let me make slide 23, chapter 3. That'll be a lab. Don't worry, I'll do the lab and then I'll have you guys follow along. I'm not going to just throw you into the wilds. Slide 23, CH3. Okay, cool. That'll be part of our things to do. Moving on. This is the source drive you select. I might use the flash drive I have just to capture stuff so you guys can see how it works. You guys can have a flash drive, go something on there, see what you can capture, and go from there. Then you select the image type, RAW, Smart, EO1, AFF. We might do RAW just because it's common and it can be read by every tool that you will be using, but we'll get there. Don't worry. So case number, evidence number. I'll take a screenshot. I'll have you guys fill it out with, for example, case number. You can call it chapter 3 exercise. Evidence number, chapter 3 lab. I don't care. Your description. This is mine. When to thumb drive or whatever. Your name will be under examiner notes. What kind of drive thing it is. Then you have your destination of where it's going, the extension, how big. I hope you guys have the space for it too. If you don't, we'll figure something out. Let me know. And this is what it looks like when it's creating the image. It's going very fast. We're on slide 28. Isn't that nice? Time elapsed, time left. The validation is maybe the most critical aspect of computer forensics. Require using a hash algorithm utility. Validation techniques, CTIS22, MD5, SHA-1, SHA-512. That's what I was thinking about. Sorry, guys, about the MD thing, MDF. That's something else. I was thinking about MD5, which did get cracked a couple years ago. Now we use SHA-1 and SHA-512 is what I referred to, not MDF. I was thinking Workbrain, mobile device. It's a manager we have. It's an MDF. That's why I'm like, wait, what? MD. It's a lot of IT stuff. I deal with it every day. But today was better. As you can tell, I'm not slurring too much and looking exhausted, I hope. Plus, the change of shirt usually helps. So validating acquiring data. So this was Linux. You can use MD5 sum or SHA-1 subutilities. MD5 sum or SHA-1 utilities should be run on all suspect disk or volumes or segmented volumes. Validating DCF LDD, which is the more advanced version, uses hash option to designate a hash algorithm of MD5, SHA-1, SHA-256, SHA-384, SHA-512. These are all kinds of encryptions. Hashing. It's an encryption method. These are all encryption methods, essentially what they are. Hash log option outputs hash results to text file that can be stored with the image files. So essentially it spits out, here's what it looks like. It's a bunch of gobbledygook, but it's essentially that's how it works. The VF is for verifying options that compare image files and original medium. It just compares 1 to 1. Sorry, I thought I hurt my phone. And I did. Give me 1 second, guys. Yeah, something odd. That part probably junk. Moving on. Windows has no built-in hashing algorithm tool for computer forensics. That's where third parties come in. That's what they use. Commercial computer forensic programs also have built-in validation features. This is the thing about Windows machines. Yeah, well, you can't do the right block because they load Windows hypothetically, or usually, right? Their third-party support is a lot bigger, obviously, because a lot more people use Windows. It's a Windows world out there. Probably do have like what 75-80% of the market. If you have a Mac, look, I'm not dissing you, but you have less shares of the market. But you've conquered 12% of the market versus 5 from like 12+ years ago. Congratulations, better than nothing. Anyway, raw format image files don't contain metadata, right? So it doesn't copy when you do raw format. So that's the only downside. Separate manual validation is required for all raw acquisitions. Yes. So if you copy raw, where it's DD, right? It's a raw format. So you can be using. It won't copy your most recent things. That's what essentially what it's saying with that. But if you want to verify, you do it separately, and I'll think about making that a lab if I don't want to get too dicey. So, how do you perform on raids? This will be pretty quick because I know you guys haven't done anything with raid. If you have, cool. And I even talk about the raids in the next slide, which is even better. It gives you a rundown on what they are. Acquisition of RAID drives can be challenging and frustrating because of how RAID systems are designed, configured, and sized. Yeah, the RAIDs get complex quick. They get configured. Makes you pull your hair out sometimes because they get really overspec, and the size can be huge. Size is the biggest concern. See, there you go. Many RAID systems now have exabytes of data. All right, here's this one. I know you're probably watching this video on sometime in the following week. For 10 extra credit points, literally message me on Canvas here and tell me how many terabytes, exabyte, and you have until the following Sunday. Let me get my phone out so I can look what the following Sunday, which should be the 30th, I think, right? You have till the 30th. That's the 30th. Bingo, bango. You have to holding it up. That's terrible. Anyways, you have till the 30th of April to tell me how much an exabyte of data is in terms of terabytes, and you will get 10 extra credit points. Pretty easy, right? That's how I make sure you watch the lectures. It's only good till April 30th, though. If you turn this in 31st, there's a 31st in April, I don't remember. May 1st or any time after this following week, I'm not taking it. I'm just letting you know. It's only fair, guys. All right. So redundancy array of independent disks. RAID. Computer configuration involving 2 or more disks. I did mention that briefly prior. Originally developed as a data redundancy measure. RAID 0 provides rapid access and increased storage. Biggest disadvantage is lack of redundancy. So RAID 0 is literally 2 drives. I'm going to try to hold something else up here. I have a bolt. Oh, God, is this going to show up? No. Whatever. Come on. Don't make me look at putts. Okay, let me look at putts. Can you see that? Okay, there you go. Let me take the cap off. They're literally side by side, 1 to 1. They're constantly copying back and forth. There's nothing backed up. They're sharing data constantly. That's what RAID 0 was. RAID 1, designed for data recovery, more expensive than RAID 0. That does perform a back. It's not sharing data constantly, if that makes sense. It's backing it up to RAID 1. There's a picture of what RAID 0 looks like next. And stripping is when it takes the blocks of data and copies it over. That's what that refers to. It's not referring to the other kind of stripping, like wire stripping. I'm not going where you think I'm going with this. That's, if you hear me stripping from now on, that's what I'm referring to, which is data copied over from one section to another, from disk 1 to disk 2. In RAID 0, you wouldn't have disks 3 and 4. It'd be just disks 1 and 2. But you can configure it to work with multiple disks if you really wanted to. But let's go on to RAID 1. RAID 1 works by backing up the data to disk 2 and having it there as backup in case that data gets corrupted. Hypothetically, in disk 1, it will check disk 2. If disk 2 is corrupted, it'll check disk 3. If disk 3 works, it'll copy it to 2, then copy it to 1, and keep it accessible in real time. That's how that works. So RAID 2 is similar to RAID 1. Data is written to a disk on a bit level. I did mention bits earlier. Has better data integrity checking than RAID 0, slower than RAID 0. So because it's indexing a lot more when it's stripping the data and moving it, it's slower than RAID 0. But RAID 0 is like you're going 110%, your drive's going to burn out from accessing data across both drives constantly back and forth without a backup. So that's kind of the downside to RAID 2. RAID 2 isn't used that often anymore, by the way. RAID 3 uses data stripping and dedicated RAID. That's a weird word. Requires at least 3 disks. Yeah. I think it's trying to say whatever. Not gonna worry about it. RAID 4, similar to RAID 3, data is written in blocks. RAID 4 is still used out there mostly for research stuff and redundancy because that is more safe than RAID 3, believe it or not. So here's what RAID 2 looks like. See, all ones shared across all 4 drives for redundancy and backup. So if something dies on RAID disk 1, it'll check disk 2 and was good, moves it in, and vice versa. Parity. I have to look up what that means. It's starting to bother me. Sorry, guys. There's RAID 5. Similar RAID 0 and 3. This is entirely recovered data on each disk. It just sprinkles out the data. That's what that means. Sorry, guys. It just grabs whatever it can with its recovered data and just saves it somewhere else. That's essentially so it can rebuild it if it need to be. Got it. I'm so sorry. RAID 6 is a redundancy check on the redundancy on each disk. Oh, that's cool. Oh. RAID 5 is still common. I've seen that a lot in research. I've seen that a lot in education. RAID 10, this is a more popular one, or mirrored stripping. So for every bit it strips from disk 1, it strips from disk 2 to disk 3. It's a little more nuanced. Combination of RAID 1 and 0 provides faster access and redundancy. That's more common now than anything. Industry and education too. And a lot of places use RAID 5 those because it's what they're used to. Here's the thing. Depending where you were, working or you wind up going for whatever you decide to do with your degree and bachelor's degree, your associates, a lot of people get stuck in their ways. That's why I'm saying this. So a lot of people don't move off from what they know. That's the best way I can put it in terms of technology. Like, oh, it's too new, we don't need it, but it still works. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. You ever heard that saying? That's how that usually goes. So then there's also RAID 15. It's RAID 1 plus RAID 5, combination of RAID 1 and 5. More costly. It's a lot more expensive because it requires more drives. Here's what RAID 5 looks like. So as you can see, it cascades down when it saves. and it puts a new one on top, authority disk 3, then disk 3 under the recovery, and then et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But as you can see, there's a recovery section in every drive of backed up data or recovered data. Give me 1 second, guys, while I grab some water, and we'll keep going. So let me pause this. All right, so let's keep going here. We're on slide 40 already, guys. We're getting there. So acquiring RAID disks. Just as the following concerns: how much data storage is needed? What type of RAID is used? Do you need to have all drives connected? You usually do, FYI. Do you have the right acquisition tool? Can the tool read a forensically copied RAID image? Can the tool read split data saves for each RAID disk, which we're covered in the other reads? Copy small RAID systems to one large disk as possible. Yeah, but in this day and age, everything averages what, a terabyte, or everything's in the cloud now, so that's a little weirder. But if it's in the cloud, it's there forever. Even if they delete it, I guarantee you that there's a backup somewhere. Just remember, everything you do on the internet stays forever. So vendors offering RAID acquisition functions. These are the 5 people doing it. Guidance software, Encase, X-Ways, Forensics, Access Data FTK, Runtime Software, RTool Technologies. Occasionally, your RAID system is too large for static acquisition. Yeah, these things become really, really big and cumbersome. Retrieve only the data relevant to investigation with sparse or logical acquisition methods. Yeah, because it's real. The target's like this big and your data needs this big, you're going to focus on what you need to look for. So yeah, you will use a sparse or logical acquisition method by searching for specific bits of data. I use accounting because everyone likes to talk about money. You can look for ledgers, you can look for PDF files with titles, you can look for what you need for QuickBooks, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So remote network acquisition tools, these are fun. You can remotely connect to a suspect's computer via a network connection and copy data from it. It's a form of, I guess you can say, hacking, but mostly law enforcement does this. Looking at you, FBI. But they have search warrants. And there's channels they have to go through to get an ISP to approve it and let them do it. I'm not going to get into it because I can get hairy. Remote action tools vary in configuration and capabilities. Drawbacks: antivirus, anti-spyware, and firewall tools can be configured to ignore remote access programs. Subject could easily install their own security tools that trigger an alarm to notify them of remote access intrusion. So that one mostly applies to you guys here and me, because we're in technology, right? We know what's up. We'll have a firewall configured, or free one if need be, or not the Windows one, but we'll have stuff at least to defend our computer. So we'll notice. But average Joe walking down the street who just can barely use a computer and can turn it on, at least that's a bonus, and use how to use Google. Yeah, they might have more luck with it. But it depends on the severity of the crime, and let's not get into that either. So here's a Pro Discovery. It's a tool, remote acquisition tool. Incident response function. So here's what we can do: capture model system state information, so it captures live data. Analyze current writing process, live data. Locate unseen files and processes, so what's hidden, it can capture that. Remotely view or listen to IP ports. That's a very good function because you can see. You can listen to their main IP of their computer and see what else it's reaching through after it jumps out of the router through the network gateway. And you can see where it connects to what web pages in terms of IP addresses. It's another way to do it. Run hash comparisons. Cool. Create a hash inventory of all files remotely. That's a terrifying thing to do if no one knows what you're doing it. So here's a couple other ones. PD server remote agent, Pro Discovery utility for remote access needs to be loaded on the suspect. All that you would have to install it without them noticing technically. PD server installation modes, trusted CD, pre-installation, push out and run remotely. PD server can run in stealth mode, can change process names to appear as OS function. Yeah, it hides in plain sight. So remote connection security features: password protection, encryption, secure communication protocol, right to protected trusted binaries, digital signatures. That's all this stuff it does. If you're curious about these, let me know. We can talk about it more. I'm not going to get too into detail about it because we'll be here for hours because it gets pretty deep. Remote acquisition features: search and collect internal and external network systems over a wide geographical area. Support multiple OSs, computer systems, and file systems. Triage will help determine system relevance to investigation. So if you're searching someone's system and they have tons of files, what would make sense? Copy the entire thing, or try to find what you're looking for. That's what it boils down to. Perform simultaneous searches for up to 5 systems at a time. So if you're looking at a network and it's 5 systems that all do accounting, what would you look for? Well, let's say you're looking for tax evasion. What would help you find that? Accounting books, check stubs. That's what you would focus on versus, an email draft they have says as a Word document. Would you want to back that up? No. That's kind of, you got to figure out what you want to look at. RTool Studio. It's another suite of software designed for data recovery. This one's for remote as well. That's what I'm going to be covering. I know I didn't mention it, but I'm just talking about this one. Can remotely access network computer systems, creates raw format acquisitions, supports various file systems. It's a pretty straightforward tool. US Lab Pro, another tool. Suite developed tool by Whetstone, can connect to a network computer remotely and perform a live acquisition of all drives connected to it. This one's a little more in depth, but I haven't really played with it too much. Then there's F-Response, a neutral remote access utility designed to work with any digital forensic program. Sets up a security read-only connection. That's pretty cool. Allows forensic examination to access it. 4 different versions of F-Response: Enterprise Edition, Consultant Plus, Covert Edition. So that's if you're working like your own firm, you start your own business. That's what you would use. Regular old Consultant Edition was just real kind of basic. And Tactical Edition was kind of a mesh of Consultant Edition and with Covert, and Enterprise Edition. It gives you different functions. I don't have access to this, unfortunately. I really wish I did. Here's a couple other tools if you're curious. Fastmark Software Image USB. That one I've used. It just helps you clone flash drives. Full flash drives, everything in it. And not just the Windows function to copy. I'm talking like full-blown bits, 0 to 1s to 1s to 0s. ASD Smart Data, I've heard of it. Or sorry, ASR Data Smart, heard of it, haven't played with it. Runtime software. Don't think I've used that one either. LookX Investigator X Imager, that was a little old, and SourceForge is pretty common too. That one's been around for a while. So let's talk about Passmark. Passmark software has an acquisition tool called Image USB for its OS forensics analysis product. You create Google Flash drives you need Windows XP or later. Image USB download from OS forensics website. That's kind of customized. Here's what ASR Data Smart does. Linux forensic analysis tool that can make image files of suspected drives. Can produce proprietary raw image formats. Mostly raw is what you want to use, but proprietary depending on the software you're using in the lab. Capabilities: data read of bad sectors, which is pretty cool. Can mount drives in write protected mode. Can mount target drives in read and write mode. Compression schemes to speed up acquisition or reduce amounts of storage needed. So it lets you tailor it a little bit. Talk about runtime here. Runtime software offers shareware programs for data acquisition and recovery, mostly with Disk Explorer for FAT or NTFS features. Creates a raw format image. Segment the raw format of compressed image for archiving purposes. Access network computer drives. So it has some networkability, but it's not a lot. That's something you would run like on a local computer. If it's saving something to like the network storage area, that's where you use this one. Runtime. Ximager runs from a bootable floppy or CD. That should just be replaced with USB. We don't use those that often anymore, but in case you do, you can. Designed to work only with iLookX. Can acquire single drives and RAID drives. And it's supposed to use for RAID. Supports IDE, PATA, SCSI, USB, and FireWire. And SourceForge provides several application analysis and investigations. You can go there and check it out if you're curious. I'll link to it in the slides. Don't worry, these slides will be posted too. So here's a summary of everything we've covered, and we're about the 45-minute mark. So we'll get there. Forensic data acquisition are stored in 3 different formats. I talk about raw, proprietary, AFF. Data acquisition methods: disk to image file, disk to disk copy, which is pretty common and fine. So stop them. Logic disk to disk or disk to data file. Kind of still copy, or kind of still common, but not as common. Sparse data copy, which is what you focus on when you're looking for specific things. We talked about it. Oops, jumped one too many. Then there are several tools available. Lossless compression is acceptable. Find your digital evidence contingencies. Make a copy of each acquisition. Backups. Backup your evidence. Sorry. Write and block devices utilities must be used with GUI acquisition tools. Graphic user interface. That's what GUI stands for. Always validate acquisitions. Just make sure you validate it, because if you copy data and it's no good, then what? You're stuck. That's what you validate. Linux live CDs such as SIFT, Kali Linux, or Deft provides many useful tools for digital forensic acquisition. And then the preferred way for tool for Linux is DCFLDD, not DD. Use a physical write block device for acquisition. That's mostly for the Windows one. For Linux, remember you can do that with Linux. To acquire a RAID disk, determine the type of RAID, and then which acquisition tool to use. Yeah, right. Remember we said it gets really big. Remote network acquisition tools require installing a remote agent on the suspect's computer. That's essentially it for this chapter. For the next chapter, I'm only doing half of it because it'll be part 1 of it. And that should be it for this week, guys. I will see you in the next one. Have a good one.